You know, we can put that on the front.
Test, 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 test.
All right, let's hear everybody touch their microphone.
We'll start with Julia. Nothing yet.
Louder, louder. Did you do it? Little, okay.
Oh, I heard a little bit. Did you hear it? Just a little. Cool. Gregory, you want to go?
Testing, testing. Testing. Testing, testing. Mic check, mic check.
You do want to speak like this when you get the microphone.
We don't got David yet. Can I see what you're on? Channel 8. Oh, that was really loud. Hi, everyone.
All right, David, let's hear you.
Okay, yeah.
I can hear you better. Yeah.
You can hear me better?
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
All right, so anybody that's here for the panel discussion, we're about to start in just a minute here. If you're in the Coma Cafe, you're more than welcome to join, but just please wear a mask and be respectful of those who already sat down. All right. And I do ask that if you do have a beverage, if you pull down your drink, totally fine. Just make sure you put your mask on afterwards. We're just trying to all socially distance as much as possible today. Parking. We had Summerfest and Arts Festival going on. I know we decided to do this, not sure what it all looked like today, but to see as many as we do today, I am overjoyed by it. And we did have a super successful cold painting and paper making workshop done by these two, led by Marilyn today. See a glimpse of that coming up on our social media. We got some great documentation, so check that out. It was so fun. And for those who want to stick around after the panel talk today, we will have a reception, so we can decide to mingle if you so choose. We actually are going to be open until 8 p.m., so even if you want to head out for food and come back, we'll be open a little bit later than was posted online. But to get into it, I guess I can put my mask down while I'm talking so you can see my face. My name is Riley Niemock. I am MARN's Gallery Director, and we are in the MARN Art and Culture Hub. So many of you maybe haven't been here yet, so I welcome you to our new space. We're overjoyed by it. We haven't had a grand opening yet, so you're continuously being in the space that's kind of still in transition. It probably will be for years to come. That's what we're here for. Transitionary, figuring it out as we go. We're artists and we're here to support creatives. The MARN Art and Culture Hub is located in the historic Third Ward of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is a traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, Menominee homeland with the people of Wisconsin sovereign Ashawibe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, Bogan nations remain present. So we always like to acknowledge where we are and what we lived before us. And so we are here to represent the exhibition that's going on currently. It does go until Tuesday at 5 p.m. So if you are around or you want to look at it more and have to leave right after, feel free to join us again. I have been amazed with all that came together. It was a very quick exhibition for us to put together. But what was really amazing was I met these two briefly at the RAD MKE Steamroller event, which was just weeks before they submitted for their exhibition. So it just happened chance, and to get to know you better and all about the AP3 or Interpress paper print and know about your mission to be in Milwaukee in the near future, I'm just super excited to support them in all that we can here. So do grab their brochures up front. If you don't know much about them, grab them after and learn more about Anchor Press. They have done a lot, including their press on wheels throughout this entire month. Other than that, I don't want to go on too much without getting into who is here to talk other than me. So if everyone's comfortable, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, your first name, pronouns, and maybe a little glimpse into how you approach material. Just a little sentence or something if you may consider the question. We can start with Julia.
Hi, my name is Julia Shekel. More closer. Okay, Julia Shekel. I graduated from UWM in 2020. My pronouns are she/hers, and I should talk about how I approach materials. Question. I do multi-layer spring prints. So anywhere between like 6 to 9 layers usually. I kind of use it as a way to build up colors and dimensions in a textural way.
Hi, Greg Martins. So I'm a printmaker too, and materiality for me is, I just like ink on paper. You know, I've always just enjoyed the ephemeral, throw it away when you're done with it, comic book type thing, and so I sort of lean in that lowbrow direction with materials and the work too.
Hi, my name is Anwar Floyd Pruitt, and I do not need to eat the microphone. I'll just hold it a little further away. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I studied at UW Milwaukee, where I got my BFA in 2016, and then graduated my MFA from UW-Madison in 2020. My approach to materiality has been, and as a sort of art student for the 7 of the last 8 years, been very experimental. And I had the great fortune of studying at UW Milwaukee, where there were so many resources available, and so I just tried everything. And I think I've let the materials speak to me because I knew I wasn't going to master all of them. And like many of the people here, I use a lot of paper in my practice. The paper is still very much alive, particularly in a place like Milwaukee, where you get a lot of humidity in the summer months. So I do love watching the paper move.
So I'm Marilyn Kropp, and my husband, David Jones, and we just moved to Kenosha 5 years ago. We lived in Chicago for 30 years. We ran a print shop in Chicago for 25 years, Anchor Graphics. But I was always a painter, and David would be making prints, and I would just watch, and I would watch him and Chris, his assistant, rolling up the ink and running things through the press, and I sort of absorbed it through osmosis. And I was teaching at Columbia College, so I decided to take a few paper making classes, and I just really fell in love with it. And when we moved to Kenosha, to this little 1937 house with studios upstairs, I thought, paint just isn't working, and solvents and all of that. And if I use no solvents, then I have to use a lot of oil, and it just wasn't working. So I just really got into making paper, and I started doing relief prints. So a lot of these are my pieces here, and I've really only been making paper and doing relief prints since probably about 2013 and 2014. But this is what I do now, and the large sheets were made out in the backyard with a big decal box that my intern helped me make. So I'm really into the materiality of the paper. I love the way the crispness of the prints sit on that beautiful fibrous paper. I use a lot of pulp painting, so there's a lot of pigmentation. I really am still painting in a lot of ways. The big pieces, I don't have a large press. I don't have access to one yet. I live in Chicago, so I take my block prints I cut them out with scissors and I collaged them down. And I discovered what I used to do when I was 5 years old, which is cutting things out of magazines and they became real to me. So here I am doing that again. And we want to start our shop up again. It'll be one of the best papers.
I'm David Jones. It's interesting to talk about materiality. I think that I love the physicality of printmaking, but I started out as a photographer many years ago. Just taking my camera everywhere. That's how I met Marilyn. Taking photographs, and I like the luminosity when images are projected, and so I'm trying to reconcile the luminosity with the process. So my images are in the front, projected from a screen, and the thing that I really love about that is the immediacy of these images that are random, chance operations. So they're always changing, they're always evolving, and they're always kind of surprising. I really love that surprise.
Yeah, so as you can hear, we have a lot of different approaches to material, but also all have a little bit of similarity. Everyone seems to be choosing. And so I just want to acknowledge that we didn't point out where Julia's pieces were. Those are just right around the corner there. They're the Green Nature spray prints. And then Gregory's are actually, those three right there in the pressure print to the very front there. Then Anwar, you have the video, 2 video pieces here. The prints, that's just right around the corner. Cutting in and out, so I'll speak loudly when I hear it. So I just make sure that if you haven't seen the works, feel free to look at them later and ask some more questions, but I want to make sure we say what each person's works were. I am super appreciative of you two explaining your works in Oliver. You guys didn't talk too much. Do you want to speak a little bit more about the material a little bit now that we're warmed up?
The stakes are higher now. Right? Yeah, okay. Okay, well, I guess I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was talking about ink on paper, but you know, I think that ephemeral quality of like comic books. I mean, you know, my stuff's pretty comic-y, cartoonish, I think is the correct word, cartoonish. And I took a lot of heat for that in college. Like, gotta stop doing that. And I'm like, I can't help it, you know. So I personally, you know, came to this idea a few years back that, you know, the most fun I ever had drawing, making art, was when I was a teenager, like sitting on the side of my bed, you know, with this weird table I had, with a black flare. Anybody remember flares? Like horrible magic markers. And just drawing black line drawings, listening to my 8-track in my bedroom, you know. And it would stick, and you know, you had to put the nickel in there to make it line up. But I mean, time went by so fast, and I just drew weird, like surrealistic, goofy things, you know, cars and bongs and, you know, monsters and vomiting, and just stupid stuff. But you know, but I had just endless fun, and I thought, well, can I do that again? Can I find that place? So that's kind of what I've been doing, just having fun. You can see, I guess, like I'm pretty lowbrow. I accept that. Get more stuff? Okay.
That was great.
So I also started as a photographer. I mean, I was really interested in painting and drawing in high school, but I also got a lot of time into photography darkroom in my high school. That got me into process and working with my hands and working with chemicals and watching images appear through chemicals. So that was really important to me when I got into college. I didn't even know what printmaking was at the time, but I knew I liked to draw, and I knew that I liked to develop film. by hand. So when I found screen printing and lithography and intaglio, combining the extended processes with drawing and illustration was really inspirational, and it aligned with the way that I illustrated images. So it became an addiction.
Wow, well, I did notice, so I admitted to all the panelists that I did a little bit of stalking on them, as you say, and browsing on their website, making sure I knew what I was talking about today. And the biggest connection now that we were talking, Julia, I made is that you and David actually have some similar approaches to making, both using photography as a base and then seeming to translate out of photography after. And the fact that both of you worded it differently, but it's basically like that you wanted to do something more with the photography after the fact, that it wasn't your immediate need, you needed something after. And when we talk about material process, what I think about, especially with those who do printmaking, is it really is about spending time with whatever you're doing and also being open to chance of it, unless you're very strict about rules. But I feel like most people learn the rules and they want to break them or find out what else they can do with it a bit. And I don't know if either of you want to talk about what led you to go from photography to printmaking, then to you even video processing. I would love to hear more thoughts about what led you to that next step.
I'll start. When I was a freshman in college, my classes counselor told me to take a printmaking course, so I took Greg Martin's printmaking course. And it was so much fun, and I really just liked hanging out with Greg, so I was like, oh, I'm just going to take one of these. So then I did, and that's the main reason why I got into printmaking, was because of the community. I was like, there's something about, like I said before, working with your hands, working with the chemicals, and like you said, leaving things up to chance, which isn't something that I really felt like I was getting through painting.
Well, I think I was thinking, as Julie was talking about, how do we start? Oh yeah, how do we start? And when I was young, my grandmother always had a 35mm rangefinder, and she took slides. That's all she took was slides, and every once in a while she'd have a slideshow. So I really love that kind of luminescent, that translucent quality that projected images have. When I was when I was in high school, we had these guys show up who actually put on a light show, and then I would go into the auditoriums and dance halls in San Francisco and be mesmerized by the light shows. And I think that I've always been trying to get back to that place of that immediacy, of that light, of that luminescence. But I really needed process to really, and no pun intended, to anchor me because of my kind of what's the word? I'm just out there, I'm just kind of floating around. So printmaking really helped me to focus. The shop that I started was an answer of being fired from a place and going, now what? What's next? And looking around and going, well, I think a print shop is in, that's what I have to do. And so now it's been kind of full circle where I'm going, that luminescence, that transitory nature of images, the ephemeral nature of images. I'm really attracted to that, and I think also there's a geeky part of me that really loves this computer program that was introduced to me when I was in school, and it's interesting how I think we've all had these things where someone introduces you to something, you kind of go, nah, I'm good, and then later on you go, well, wait a minute, that has possibilities. And so I've taught myself how to kind of manipulate this thing, and now I'm actually, because of the need to have sound, and I didn't want to rip off anybody in terms of sound, so now I'm teaching myself how to do sound recording. And it just, we're never done, right? So as artists, I think we're always exploring, we're always kind of seeing what kind of trouble we can get into. Or, because sometimes it fails miserably, and we've all done that, but that's okay.
Yeah, so similar to you, I would say, Marilyn, you have a similar story in the fact that like you started with a medium, painting, ended up in print. Left painting behind, but transferred it. And if at times you miss that material and process that you once started with or not, or do you feel like, oh, I learned enough and I'm using it differently?
Oh, gosh, never was enough. But before I get into that, I want to add something that David said. He said, oh, what can I do next? I'll start a shop. And that's not really true. We moved to Chicago so he could study with one of the best print shops in the country, Landfall Press. And so he worked there for a few years, but I got a residency in Lakeside, Michigan. And so I was there all summer, and David came up to restore their broken down print shop. And my studio mate was Ilmar Bloomberg's from Latvia. And so David printed with him, and it was the first time he, Landfall was a production printer, it was changed to the press. At Lakeside, he said, this is true collaboration. And so he discovered that he really wanted to be collaborating with artists. And that's really why he started the shop. So he kind of fleshed that off. I just wanted to let you know that we're going to do it again here in Milwaukee. The whole idea of being open to the community and collaborating with artists. As far as my own work, because of all that history of printmaking, I always said, no, I'm a painter, I'm a painter, I'm a painter. I was a painter, I started when I was maybe 18, so it's actually been about 50 years that I was a painter. I don't miss it. And I used to dream about pushing paint around, but it never really was. I wanted to be de Kooning, I wanted to be all these very physical, expressionistic, bravado painters. And after 50 years, I said, that's not me. I keep trying, but that's just not me. And the paper gives me a chance to, it's like I've come home to myself. And I've discovered something that really is working for me and means something. And these came from, I was so concerned with all the oil spills in Nigeria, and then in 2010, the Gulf oil spill, and my parents lived down there on the Gulf. And so the imagery where I used to paint machine parts that were animated and humorous, suddenly they became very ominous. And so in the paper pieces, it became more about water. When you make paper, it's very watery. As you know, we had all this plastic all over everything. It's a watery material. And so it really suits what I'm thinking about in terms of sea life trying to make its way through all the debris that's in the ocean. And so my machine parts the medium is just really right for me right now, and I will probably continue to watch it evolve. I'm 73 now, and I just feel like I'm just starting out after painting for 50 years. So the moral of the story is, you never stop exploring and working. It doesn't matter how long you've done it or what your age is. You just keep pushing.
That's very insightful, and it kind of gives me a little bit of inspiration when you're feeling a little stuck, just try a new medium, and maybe you just were in the wrong one. Speaking of, I'm an interdisciplinary artist, and I don't know what you identify as, but Anwar, you use a bunch of different types of ways to produce work, at least from what I've seen just in the show and on your website. And I was curious if you're similar to the way I approach things, where the idea informs the medium somewhat, where the material to me has concept. It has purpose. It adds to whatever I'm doing. I think most people feel that, but because I work and dabble and do so many things, it has to have a reason for it. It's just a little bit, even if it's the smallest thing, just for my gut. And I don't know if that's how you approach it, or I was curious about how you choose your outfit.
Sure. Well, when I think about the video piece that actually is showing right now, it's called Dust. those are all ceramic extrusions. And I made them, well, I made them as a sculpture. And, you know, and so there was something about extruding them and then not really smoothing the edges or anything, but just like letting them crack. I knew that they would like maintain, but that they have very rough edges. And that was exciting to me because then I just thought, well, all these edges will like hook together and it will never just be like a flat pile or a, and so then I would, you know, experiment with different ways of like stacking them all up and essentially like start with a large tube and then put all of them in there and then pull the tube off and see what type of shape it maintained or if it was like a square box. But you know, that all came to me sort of towards the end of almost a year of working in ceramics, and you know, and not really, you know, and having an idea ahead of time of like where the project was going to go. And so I displayed the sculpture made from these like thousands of like ceramic straws, and when it was time to clean up, and I'd never cleaned it up in like and when, you know, when I just started like putting them all back in the in their case, and it was then the sound that really pushed me to make this video. So I always, you know, I think that the materials we choose also have possibilities beyond the specific reasons that we choose them. And, you know, particularly if you are allowing for this sort of experimental space, then you'll always realize more through the material than perhaps you even set out to. And that type of practice requires a lot of time. Right? It requires, and all practices do, but you know, to build in time to make the object or image or video that you set out to make, in addition to all of like the experimental time, you really need to you know, be in the studio or collaborate. And you know, to Marilyn's point, the print that is on the wall there would never have been made without, you know, this collaborative process and like just like I think even like the organization of the steamroller printmaking event at my studio, the House of Rad. It was not a single individual who made that happen. And then again, this like choice of fabric that I printed on, I didn't make that fabric. And that fabric is from, you know, it's from West Africa. It might say specifically what country. So there's a collaboration there as well, and something about my material choice that was also, you know, sort of out of my hands at a certain point.
Well, and that's what's interesting about this show in general, and what I think about with printmaking, and what I think about with those who practice printmaking as more of their main practice, is they always talk about community, and the fact that you really, it's hard to do it by yourself. Unless you have a lot of money or your own studio that has everything in it, you usually have to involve somebody throughout that process, or you're working next to somebody, depending on the environment you're in. So Gregory, I know that you sometimes are a professor, and what I see most in your work recently is printmaking, though, and on your website you have multiple. Is community something that you really strive for when you're making?
Oh, well, yes. Now I just sort of work alone at home, which is really lonely. It's more fun, you know. It's just so much more because, you know, printmaking particularly, it's a lot of technical tricks and tips, and you figured out the easiest way to accomplish this little thing, and passing on all that information. You want to do that. You want to help people get the hang of it. so that they can experience that experimentation, you know, of the material in the moment, and that pulling the paper off of that block or off of that stone, or there's nothing like that. It's Christmas morning, you know. I mean, it's like, what's going to happen? And if you've never had a chance to do that, just take the simplest printmaking class, and you will know what we're talking about. It's a magical thing. It's like, and you think, not enough ink, or too much ink, or more blue, or I got to do this different, and a whole world opens up as to what's next. And if you're doing this together, you get if you're printing with David Jones, he's got millions of tips and tricks, and let me just make a plug for what this show is. It's AP3 at MARN, which sounds like a foreign language to many people. So it's Anchor Press, Paper, and Print at the Milwaukee Artist Resource Network. And it's a collaborative show to show some of the people that have helped or are friends with or who love Anchor Press, Paper, and Print, which is these two. And that's their shop in Chicago did those things. They built that community. They brought in kids, and they brought in artists from all over the world, and big name and small name, unknown and big, you know, well-known, together and work together. And we're trying to start that up again in Milwaukee. And that's, I guess, my plug for that. I love that community, and I hope you can get a little taste of it too.
Well, I'm glad you plugged, because you did a better job than I did in the beginning, so thank you. And I did say that it's been beautiful getting to know these people, and the fact that it was kind of a happen chance, and then they submitted, and we're got all gung-ho about it. But Marilyn really is the curator of this exhibition, and I wonder if you'd be curious to talk about how you see the whole exhibition together now that it's complete versus when you first hypothesized it being this show.
Am I on? Yes. Okay. I see Diane West in the audience there, and that is her amazing piece, that color piece, and then the black and white. And Diane teaches at Carthage College, and so she was a colleague of mine for maybe 2 years. Years ago, and she was kind enough to let us stay at her Airbnb for free during the steamroller event at the House of Red. And what else? And then Anwar I met, I was just wandering, actually I was heading toward the bathroom, and I went through his studio, and so got to know him a little bit. And when I went online and looked at his very powerful videos. This one here, it's rather shocking initially, but all of these horrible names people are called are scrunched up and covered with plaster or white paint and thrown at his body, which is what it's like to be called those names in our society or in any society. It's this abusive, horrible thing. So there he is getting bombarded. And then it's transformed, and at the end he holds up a sign that says human. That's it. It's not all those other labels. I'm very moved by that piece. It's very powerful. And then I said, oh, do you have any other in prints? And Jessica Munich Ganger, who has the little paper on the pedestal, who's also around the corner, she's a very dear friend of ours, and she's also on our board of directors for Anchor, and Greg is now, and Julia too. And so Jessica said, oh, Anwar has this gorgeous, huge print. I want that to be in the show, so I texted you, and that's how that came in. And then we had everything set up, and we had Matt, and we had Rita's amazing pieces that are kind of a paper from Korea that when you roll it together, you get those little strands that are on that one piece. And then, of course, Normal's piece, I knew about that, and I knew about her. She's sitting way in the back. And she has those, I don't know how to describe them, but it's like they're...
Describe the series of what they're from. So it's almost like a scripture.
Yeah. But I don't know what they're exactly made of. Okay, Hanji paper. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, it all came together. But then at the last minute, Greg says, you've got to let Beryl Lutsky in the show. He's the grandfather of printmaking, which I think he's younger than we are. But I said, I said, okay, sure. So that,
No, that's great. I mean, it's fun to always hear, as anybody that's curated a show would I'd probably agree, is you have an idea, but when it's actually physically up, there's always something that you didn't expect. Maybe a connection between artists that you didn't see initially once it was physically there, or like you said, you've got an artist to show something that they don't normally show. Maybe it's an older work that they're showing now that just felt different in the new space, new year. So I just like to ask that question, so thank you.
Oh,
I know I kind of put you on the spot on that one. But it's funny, we're really talking about material process in this panel, but it does come down to community at the end of the day. And being in this culture hub, it seems like it's just leaning that way. I really didn't intend for the conversation to go that way, but it makes sense in a partnership exhibition. So it's really exciting to hear all of that. But I do kind of want to hear a little about each person a little bit more. And one question when I looked at your work, Anwar, that I had in particular is I was looking through your portfolio, and one of your works, and I wrote it down here, maybe you can remind me the title, was a bunch of portraits. There was multiple. And I didn't read a statement about it, but it made me have an instant connection to your print that you have up right now. This print doesn't have any facial features, just the silhouette. But those ones were very focused, it felt like, on the facial features, where it actually transfers from a drawing of a face where you kind of see elements of it abstracted, and then it kind of evolved to me to eyeballs being the main focus, like just eyes, and then it kind of get abstracted and go crazy in terms of the mixed media. But I don't know if that was kind of the birth of what's happening here.
Absolutely. It is. You know, I've been working in self-portraiture for, you know, it started at UW Milwaukee, so it was probably 2016 or so, 2017, when, well, I had a job working in custodial services at a hospital, and so I cleaned a lot of bathrooms. And sometimes when I was cleaning a mirror, I would also just take out my dry erase marker and trace my face, trace the reflection of my face in the mirror. And then I would, you know, close one eye, close the other eye, use my dominant hand, use my non-dominant hand, and just get all of these really strange and abstract versions of myself. And it was also very ephemeral. I mean, I could shoot a photograph. Which is, if you photograph something drawn on a mirror, then you also kind of get this like double sometimes. Also mainly working in sculpture, you know, while I was doing that, and then I took a trip with a professor from UW Milwaukee, Ryan Mandel, to study design, Dutch design and contemporary art. And I couldn't take any more photographs. Right? My phone, the SIM card was full, or however it worked, you know. And so then I moved to just notebooks. And I just started filling notebooks furiously, and then making notebooks on the spot, you know, there in the Netherlands with whatever kind of paper I could find. And so, you know, in a way, and the writing is not particularly, doesn't necessarily have a flow to it, right? And it feels just all of these sort of autobiographical or just very sort of self-referential statements that a person could probably not look in those notebooks and pull out the same story that I would pull out. So, I don't know, I guess I just felt like, and it all comes down to when I was young and I modeled for JCPenney's and Sears and Kohl's and that type of thing, and getting used to seeing my image other places than in the photographs I had taken, or you know, finding like these images. A friend of mine was at this tech conference in San Francisco. This was probably in like 2000. He goes, "There's a 30-foot tall poster of you on the wall," and it was like this acting gig where I was just looking at a computer, and I had no idea where that was going to like end up. And so the self-portraiture right now, and like these like various versions of self-portraiture, and these various versions. There we go. The self-portraiture and these like various versions of self-portraiture are largely about you know, controlling my own image, and even though they're abstract sometimes, and I think it still leaves. I think the fact that they're abstract actually leaves a little more, a broader definition of who I am than if it were less abstract.
Which kind of pulls you to the human piece, which I've actually heard that that piece is used at UWM for starting students. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I didn't know that,
Yeah.
but that's cool.
I think Jessica told me that they use it for that. So now you know. I guess they introduce people to the.
And it's such a powerful piece that sometimes I really don't even, I kind of remove myself from it. You know, it wasn't about me necessarily, but it was, but I had my own body to act upon. And it's nice to revisit it.
Yeah, okay.
Can I add a little bit to now that I've watched Anwar's piece like 30 times in a row? I'm like stunned, you know. But that speaks to something that you know, not just printmakers but all artists experience, and that is that once you release it into the world, it has a life of its own, and you know, you're finding out you don't even know what that life might be sometimes, and you know, I often think that you know, the stuff I make's the size that, you know, if someone buys it, they're gonna like put it in their dining room maybe, or not even in the dining room, like behind the furnace, or you know, something somewhere. But they must have liked it enough to want it, you know. But I don't have like big hopes. But when I see things like that, I'm like, oh no, that could go far into the world and have its own life. And you know, it's exciting to do that as an artist. You know, we don't make much money and we don't necessarily get a ton of feedback, but every now and then we hear that our work is out there somewhere doing its thing, and hopefully it's informing and delighting someone, and that's enough. I think that's enough for us. We would like the money too, but.
Well, funnily enough, I'm just going to add, I was looking up, because you remind me, is it Big Prince? What's the name of your...
Me?
Yeah.
What's the name of the show, that other show? Or?
It says Big Prince or something, you run that.
Oh, I don't run it. Really Big Prince?
Really Big Prince.
Oh, that's Beryl. That's Beryl.
Oh, that's Beryl.
He runs that. That's
Okay.
his baby.
Okay.
And it's a steamroller thing.
Okay.
With
Well, I think
big
I
wood
saw a
cuts.
little booklet on your website that was related to that or something, but it looks like a cat figure or something.
Oh, that sketchbook, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually have that. I don't know where I found it. It's been sitting in my studio for years, just sitting there. And
You like it?
I do like it, honestly. I'm carrying it with me everywhere I go. And it's talking about the fact that like the print, especially printmaking, depending on whether you scan it and then print it smaller, however you do your consumer-friendly version of your art, you literally can live in people's pockets, in their purses, in, like I said, in my studio, on my table. For whatever reason, it's just been living there because I like it. I like the idea of it. I think
So it's something that I don't have to think about. I just know. Like when I'm walking around, I'll either go on camping trips specifically to go out and find nature photos. And when I see those, I know that I need to reproduce it because I really like that moment in time. Something about the scenery speaks me, or something about the people that I'm with. I feel really connected to them, which makes me connected to the moment, which inspires me to reproduce it through drawing.
And I read you studied narrative, at least in school. Do you feel like your photos that you produce have a narrative to you, whether to you or you think that another person can get a narrative? Is that a heavy element for you?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of it is personal narrative. That's what it really started out as, like a way of self-expression. Yeah, I mean, every photograph that I take that then turns into a drawing, which turns into a print, whenever I take that, it's a moment that makes me feel something, whether that's, like I said, connection with my friends, connection with the environment. So it is about my friends and the environment, the people that I love, the earth that we live on. But it is also about me and how I connect with all of that.
And you're making these works on, nature, environmental thoughts, all those, maybe the negative aspects, but in a very beautiful way. Were you always making work that was based on the environment, or what pulled you? You said something about the oil spills. Are you still focusing on the oil spills, or where has it translated now to you?
I have to think about that. I went in a residency in Wyoming, probably 2005, and I was there for a month at Gentile residency, which anyone out there highly recommend. Acres and 1,000 acres of space and light. And when I got back, I was really working with landscape. But I've always loved machine parts, and David has so many photographs of machines, and I'm always borrowing his photographs for those, so I can draw those forms. And so I was doing, up until about 2010, I had animated machine parts traveling along a landscape. About the Niger Delta, and Dutch Shell Oil they've been there like 40 or 50 years, destroying the environment, leaking oil all over, killing the mangroves. They're still there. I just read about it. They're pulling out, but they're not cleaning up after themselves. So this one woman said, we're all suffocating. She lives there. We're all suffocating from the smell of the oil, and when I go fishing, my nets are coated in oil, and there's not much fish left, and the mangroves are all dead, so that causes floods. And I was infuriated reading about this in 2009, still going on. And then the Gulf oil spill. I used to visit my parents down in the Gulf of Mexico. They moved there in probably 1970, and I'd walk across the road to the Gulf. So this was a part of my life. And this hit me personally when there was that big oil spill in 2010. So I don't think I think these are still playful. I think the machine parts still are kind of funny and funky and playful. And I try to make ugly, assaultive, horrific art, like my pal here. It always turns out beautiful. I can't not do it. They always come out just lush and sensuous and gorgeous, no matter how much I'm thinking about destruction. It doesn't come out of my art. So, what was your question again? Sorry.
You're still making work about this.
Yeah, I am still doing that. The machine parts, when I lived in Chicago, I would go around and pick up plastic bottles everywhere, like bags and bags and bags full people were throwing out. It would drive me crazy, but then I got a virulent staph infection in my finger from doing this, and they had to practically take my finger off. So I stopped doing that, but I would wear gloves and pick up the plastic. It was like my job, and David would say, "This is not your job," but I couldn't stop. And so I don't know if it's in, maybe not in any of these, but anyway, there is a plastic bottle that looks like a plant form or a sea creature. It's been transformed, and it usually shows up, but I don't think it's any of these. I don't know. No. Anyway, I haven't run out of this yet, and I'm still infuriated by the irresponsibility of these, the oil and gas companies, and yes, I'm furious. And so I make this art because and I don't know how I started on the turtles, but then I read about them, and they're an ancient symbol of longevity, creativity, perseverance through obstacles, not unlike the artist in the artist's life. So they became sort of symbols for me, as well as trying to make their way through all of the debris and the detritus. So I don't see this ending anytime soon, and of course now we're in the middle of the climate crisis. Yeah, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of raw material to work with here.
Yeah, and when did the circle motif start developing? Was that when you started thinking about what else?
When I went to the residency in Wyoming, I was making paintings on wood panels. And they said, you can't ship large things because we have to store it all in the barn. So I put all my paintings up into puzzle pieces and thought I'll reconstruct them when I get there. And so when I came back, I was doing puzzle pieces, but I started doing big circles made up of 12 puzzle pieces, and they were like almost 5 feet by 5 feet, which solved all my problems. One, they could be packed easily, you grab each one and start from. Two, I was always working on 3 or 4 different things at once, and when they were separated and installed, they missed each other, they needed each other. This way, all 12 pieces were together in one painting, and they all could go together, and I could work on them all at the same time. And the circle enabled me to create fluidity and continuity, and compositionally I could have a lot of movement. So when I switched over to paper, I'd already done years, maybe 5 or 6 years of big circle paintings in pieces. I don't know. It works for me. It creates movement, it creates energy, compositionally. I never put anything horizontally or vertically in my paintings. They're always diagonal to create movement. Did I answer your question?
You're a little beep. You might need batteries. Thank you. That was great. And it's just like I said, I was doing my homework and I'm finding these connections that I'm making in your artwork. So I thank you for answering again. Which leads me, what was interesting too, kind of diving in without having deep conversations with any of you in person, was finding that most of you have dabbled in sculpture as well. And so like you, Julia, you had some sculptures. Gregory, I think you had some sculpture on yours as well. And which seems funny because I'm thinking of you two as printmakers right now.
You know, you gotta get your hands on something every now and then. It's like a piece of paper, you know. I always like ceramics, you know, just making the clay do something, see what it says, its materiality, you know. And I actually think one of the greatest college classes I ever took, and I think they still come out, who knows what they're teaching during COVID, but I think it was a ceramics class, like sculpting the figure in clay. So they brought in like live models, and you had to like build clay stuff, you know, on armature, like get a likeness, you know, far away, close up, big, small. And then I think the assignments were to do each other's heads, you know, like life-size bust of your partner, you know. And it was so weird because I always just like to draw, but just, you know, seeing everything differently as an artist instead of just in 2 dimensions, to actually see it in 3 and feel it, touch it. Just thrilling for me. It was always not enough to just have 2 dimensions.
Thank you.
Most of my sculptures were created because I was being forced to make sculptures.
Okay.
But that really propelled me to start making more. when I was in college, they were pushing me to go three-dimensional, to make artist books, to make photo sculptures. And at first, I was not enjoying it, but then I really enjoyed it after making a few. And it just, I haven't had enough time to explore the three-dimensional world. I definitely see myself going into the